Amelia Moore had translated for warlords, diplomats, and CEOs who could buy small countries before breakfast, but she had never been asked to stay longer than necessary. "Ms. Moore, the contract's been updated." The agency director slid a tablet across the marble table, her smile too sharp to be kind. "Mr. Beck's team needs you in Seoul. 2 months, full immersion." Amelia didn't touch the tablet. She'd learned early in her career that hesitation bought you information. The director's smile tightened. "This wasn't the original agreement," Amelia said. "No, but Mr. Bayek specifically requested you." That was the part that didn't make sense. Amelia had spent 3 days with Bayek Seung-jae, and the man had barely looked at her. Their first meeting had been so aggressively professional, it bordered on hostile. He'd walked into the London prep room flanked by 2 assistants, spent 4 hours drilling media responses in flawless English, then left without a single personal word. The only time he'd acknowledged her existence was to correct her pronunciation of a board member's name. She should have declined right there. Instead, she heard herself say, "When do we leave?" If you've ever taken a job you knew would change everything, hit that subscribe button, because Amelia's about to find out what she's signed up for. Drop a comment. Have you ever accepted something you couldn't explain? Let's talk about it. The flight to Seoul was 13 hours of silence. Seung-jae worked. Amelia observed. His assistant, a man named David Park, who spoke English with a California accent and Korean with Seoul formality, briefed her in the business class lounge. "Mr. Beck left Korea 8 years ago," David explained, sliding her a portfolio thick enough to break a toe. "Built his entire career in London and New York. Tech acquisitions, venture capital, the kind of work that doesn't require him to smile for cameras." "So why come back?" Amelia asked. David's expression went carefully neutral. "That's not my place to say," which meant, "You'll find out and you won't like it." Seoul hit her like a wall of sound and glass. The city was sharper than London, faster than New York, more relentless than both. Amelia had worked in 23 countries, spoke 6 languages fluently, and prided herself on adapting quickly. But Seoul didn't care about her adaptability. It simply was, loudly, aggressively, unapologetically. The corporate headquarters occupied 4 floors of a building so modern it looked like it had been designed by someone who hated curves. Everything was angles and glass and cold lighting that made everyone look vaguely ill. Amelia's role was simple. Be present. Be invisible. Translate when spoken to. She was good at invisible. The first board meeting lasted 4 hours. 16 executives, all men, all Korean except for 2 white consultants who spoke through translators. Amelia sat in the corner with her tablet, transcribing and translating in real time. The consultant's translator was a nervous young man who kept apologizing for breathing too loud. Amelia didn't apologize. She just worked. Seung-jae sat at the head of the table, and if Amelia had thought he was controlled in London, here he was practically carved from ice. He spoke Korean with the kind of precision that made every word sound like a contract clause. No inflection, no warmth, just information, delivered cleanly. She translated everything: profit margins, merger timelines, risk assessments. Her fingers moved across the tablet without pause, feeding real-time translations to the consultant's earpieces. Then, during a break in the presentation, one of the older executives, silver-haired, expensive suit, the kind of face that had never heard the word no, leaned toward his neighbor and said in Korean, "How long do you think she'll last?" The younger executive smirked. "A month, maybe. They never stay longer. Too uncomfortable." "Does she even understand what we're saying? Does it matter? She's just temporary help." Amelia's fingers stilled for half a second. Then she resumed typing, translating the next slide about Q4 projections as if nothing had happened. Seung-jae's eyes flicked to her. Once. Briefly. She kept her expression neutral. The meeting continued. When it ended, the executives filed out with polite nods and business cards. David approached Amelia with her schedule for the next day. "Same time, different floor," he said. "You did well." "Thank you." David hesitated, then lowered his voice. "They don't mean to be rude. It's just, they're not used to—" "I know what they're not used to," Amelia said quietly. "It's fine." It wasn't fine, but it also wasn't new. That night, alone in her hotel room with its view of Seoul's neon-soaked skyline, Amelia opened her laptop and stared at a half-written email to her sister, back in Toronto. "Seoul is beautiful. The work is good. I'm fine." All lies. Technically. Seoul was overwhelming. The work was exhausting. And she wasn't fine. She was that specific kind of tired that came from being looked at and unseen at the same time. She deleted the email and went to bed. The second week, Seung-jae asked her to stay late. "I need to prep for the press conference," he said. It was the first time he'd spoken directly to her in days. "David's gone home. Would you mind?" Amelia minded. She was exhausted, underpaid for overtime, and fairly certain she'd eaten something at lunch that her stomach was still negotiating with. But she said, "Of course." They worked in his office, just the two of them and too much coffee. Seung-jae ran through his talking points in Korean, then English, then back to Korean. He was meticulous to the point of pain. Amelia listened to him practice the same answer 3 times before she finally interrupted. "You're hedging," she said. Seung-jae stopped mid-sentence. "What? You're phrasing. You just said Jew." "부족한 의견으로는 아마도, that's in my humble and inadequate opinion, perhaps maybe." "You're the CEO. You shouldn't sound like you're asking permission to have thoughts." Seung-jae blinked at her. "Try this instead," Amelia continued. "Je pense neuronen. In my judgment. Clean, authoritative, no apology." He repeated the phrase slowly. "Je pense neuronen." "Better," Amelia said. "You're not a junior analyst presenting to your boss. You're the one making the decisions. Your Korean should reflect that." Seung-jae set down his notes and looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time since London. "Do I do that often?" he asked. "Sound like I'm apologizing?" Amelia hesitated, then chose honesty. "Yes." He absorbed that in silence, then said, "In Korean or English?" "Both. But it's worse in Korean." "Why?" "Because English was your language of power," Amelia said. "You built your career in it. But Korean—" She paused, choosing her words. Carefully. "Korean is the language you left behind. When you speak it here, you sound like you're still asking for permission to come back." The silence that followed was so heavy, Amelia could hear the hum of the air conditioning. Finally, Seung-jae said quietly, "You're right." He didn't elaborate, didn't explain why he'd left or what he was afraid of, but he used her phrasing for the rest of the prep session, and every time he said "je pense neuronen" instead of hedging, his voice got a little steadier. At midnight, when Amelia finally stood to leave, Seung-jae said, "You went quiet during the board meeting last week." Amelia's hand froze on her bag strap. "Just for a moment," he continued, still looking at his notes. "When Executive Director Cho and Director Lim were talking during the break, you stopped translating." Amelia's pulse kicked up. Of course he'd noticed. "It wasn't relevant to the meeting," she said carefully. "What did they say?" "It doesn't matter. It does to me." He looked up at her then, and his expression was unreadable. "What did they say, Ms. Moore?" She could have lied, should have deflected. Instead, she said, "They were speculating about how long I'd last, whether I understood Korean, whether it mattered." She kept her voice even, professional. "They called me temporary help." Seung-jae's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "I see," he said quietly. "It's not your problem," Amelia said. "I didn't translate it because it wasn't business. It was just noise. It's not noise." His voice was sharper now. "And it is my problem." Amelia didn't know what to say to that. Seung-jae stood, walked to the window, and looked out at the city sprawling below them. You were right, he said after a long moment. About the apology. I've been doing it my whole life. In Korea, if you're not constantly deferring, you're arrogant. But abroad, if you defer too much, you're weak. He turned to face her. I left because I was tired of apologizing for taking up space. And I came back because I thought I'd finally earned the right not to. And? Amelia asked quietly. And apparently I still sound like I'm asking permission. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Old habits. Amelia wanted to say something comforting, something wise. Instead, she said, You don't need permission, not from them, not from anyone. Seung-jae looked at her for a long moment. Thank you, Ms. Moore, he said. Amelia, she corrected before she could stop herself. He nodded slowly like he was committing it to memory. Amelia? The way he said it, careful, deliberate, like he was learning the shape of it, made something in her chest tighten. She left before she could do something stupid, like stay. The press conference was a disaster waiting to happen. Not because Seung-jae wasn't prepared, he was over-prepared to the point of rigidity, but because 3 hours before he was supposed to face 50 journalists and explain why he was worthy of leading Korea's third-largest tech conglomerate, someone leaked a story. Baek Seung-jae, outsider or opportunist. The article was in Korean, English, and Japanese. It questioned his loyalties, his intentions, his right to even be there. It dredged up his father's scandal from 15 years ago, embezzlement charges that were dropped but never forgotten. It painted Seung-jae as a man who'd abandoned Korea when it was convenient and returned only when there was profit to be made. Amelia watched him read it on his phone, his face completely blank. Do you want to cancel? David asked, hovering nervously. No. We could reschedule. Give the media time to... No. Seung-jae set down his phone with deliberate calm. We go as planned. David looked at Amelia like she might have better luck talking sense into him. She didn't try. She recognized the look in Seung-jae's eyes. She'd seen it in mirrors often enough. I will not run. Not again. The press conference was brutal. The journalists were polite in that particularly cutting Korean way. Soft voices, sharp questions. They asked about his father, about his years abroad, about whether he understood real Korean business culture, or if he'd been away too long. Seung-jae answered every question with the same controlled precision, never defensive, never apologetic. But Amelia could hear it, the tiny hesitations, the over-formal phrasing creeping back in whenever the questions got personal. He was reverting to his armor, and it was making him sound guilty of something he hadn't done. During a brief break, she leaned close and said quietly in English, "Stop hedging." He glanced at her, startled. "You're doing it again," she murmured. "The apologies. Every time they ask about your father, you sound like you're responsible for his choices. You're not. I know that. Then stop talking like you don't." The second half of the conference was different, sharper. When a journalist asked if he felt Korean enough to lead a Korean company, Seung-jae didn't hesitate. "I don't feel the need to prove my identity to anyone," he said in Korean, clean and direct. "I'm here because I'm qualified. My work speaks for itself." Amelia saw several journalists sit up straighter. When it was over, David looked like he'd aged 5 years. Seung-jae looked exhausted but steady. "You did well," Amelia said as they walked to the car. "I had a good coach." He glanced at her, something almost like a smile tugging at his mouth. "Thank you, Amelia." It was the first time he'd used her first name in front of other people. David's eyebrows rose slightly, but he said nothing. In the car, Seung-jae's phone buzzed relentlessly. News alerts, messages from board members. A text from someone named Rachel that made his expression tighten before he put the phone away entirely. "Bad news?" Amelia asked. "Just noise," he said, echoing her words from before. She almost smiled. That night, the board chair called an emergency meeting. Amelia wasn't supposed to be there, it was internal only, but Seung-jae asked her to come anyway. "I might need a translator," he said. "Your Korean is perfect." I know, but I might need you to translate what they're not saying. The meeting room was smaller than the boardroom, more intimate, which somehow made it worse. 8 people, all older than Seung-jae, all looking at him like he was a problem to be managed. The board chair, a woman named Kwon Mirai with steel gray hair and sharper eyes, got straight to the point. "The article is a problem," she said in Korean. "The article is a lie," Seung-jae replied evenly. "The truth doesn't matter if it damages investor confidence." She leaned forward. "We need you to address your father's history publicly. Separate yourself from him completely." Amelia watched Seung-jae's hands, resting on the table. They didn't move, didn't clench, but she saw the tension in his shoulders. "My father's case was closed 15 years ago," he said. "There's nothing to address." "Then address the perception," another executive interjected. "Tell them you're not him, that you've spent your entire career proving you're different." "I shouldn't have to prove that, but you do." Kwon Mirai's voice was firm but not unkind. "You're asking Korea to trust you. Trust requires proof." The room waited. Seung-jae said nothing. Amelia knew she shouldn't speak. She was there to translate, not participate. But she heard herself say in English, "May I ask a question?" Every head turned toward her. Kwon Mirai's expression was unreadable. "Go ahead," she said in perfect English. "What exactly are you asking him to prove?" Amelia asked. "That he's competent. His resume does that. That he's committed. He's here, isn't he? Or are you asking him to publicly apologize for his father's choices, choices he had no part in, just to make you more comfortable?" The silence was deafening. One of the executives said coldly in Korean, "This is not your concern." Amelia switched to Korean without missing a beat. "You're right, it's not. But I was asked to be here, so I'm here." Kwon Mirai studied her for a long moment. Then, surprisingly, she smiled, just slightly. "Fair enough." She turned back to Seung-jae. "We're not asking you to apologize. We're asking you to be smart. You can be right or you can be effective, rarely both at the same time." Seung-jae met her eyes. "I'll consider it." "Consider quickly. We have another board meeting in 2 days." The meeting ended. As people filed out, Kwon Mirai paused beside Amelia. "You're bolder than I expected," she said in English. "I'm paid to translate accurately," Amelia replied. "Sometimes that includes subtext." Kwon Mirai's smile widened. "I like you. Try to keep him from self-destructing, would you?" Then she was gone. Seung-jae and Amelia were the last ones in the room. He was still sitting, staring at the empty table. "I shouldn't have spoken," Amelia said. "That was unprofessional." "No, you were right." He looked up at her. "Thank you." "For what?" "For saying what I couldn't." Amelia sat down across from him. The room felt too big and too small at the same time. "Are you going to do it?" she asked. "The public statement?" "I don't know." He rubbed his face, suddenly looking years older. "My father made his choices. I've spent my entire life trying not to be defined by them, and now they want me to define myself in opposition to him, publicly, as if that's not just another way of letting him control my narrative." "What do you want?" Amelia asked. "I want to be judged on my own merit. Is that naive?" "No, but it might be idealistic." He laughed, short and bitter. "That's a kind way of saying yes. I'm a translator. Kindness is part of the job." That got a real smile out of him. Small, but genuine. "You're more than a translator," he said quietly. Amelia's heart did something complicated in her chest. She stood quickly. "It's late. You should go home. So should you." "I will, after I finish the notes." He stood, walked to the door, then paused. "Amelia?" "Yes?" "Do you ever get tired of speaking for other people?" The question hit her harder than it should have. "Every day," she admitted. He nodded like he understood. "Good night, Amelia." "Good night." After he left, Amelia sat alone in the empty conference room and wondered when exactly she'd stopped being just his translator, and whether that was going to be a problem. The scandal didn't die. It metastasized. By morning, 3 more articles had surfaced, each one more creative in its speculation than the last. Anonymous sources claimed Seung Jae had only returned to Korea to strip the company for parts and sell it to foreign investors. Another suggested his entire career abroad was built on his father's stolen money. None of it was true. All of it was spreading. David briefed them over coffee that tasted like burnt regret. "The board wants you back in Seoul for crisis management," he said, not quite meeting Seung Jae's eyes. "They've scheduled back-to-back meetings, a PR strategy session, and they want a public statement drafted by end of day." "No," Seung Jae said. David blinked. "I'm sorry?" "Cancel it. All of it." "Seung Jae, you can't just—" "We're going to Jeju." Seung Jae stood, buttoning his jacket with deliberate calm. "I have meetings there already scheduled. Small investors, private dinners, people who actually know my work. The board can wait 3 days." His voice was quiet but final. "If I react to every anonymous article, I validate them. I'm not doing that." David looked desperately at Amelia, as if she might talk sense into him. She didn't, because she understood exactly what Seung Jae was doing. He was refusing to run, but he was also refusing to break himself open for people who'd already decided what they wanted to see. "I'll arrange the travel," David said finally, defeated. Jeju Island rose from the sea like something out of a painting Amelia couldn't afford. To say it was breathtaking was a severe understatement. The private estate sat on the southeastern coast, all clean lines and glass walls that framed the ocean like art. The team here was smaller. Just David, 2 junior analysts, and a cook who spoke no English but made soup that tasted like comfort. The first day, Seung Jae worked. Calls with investors, video conferences with partners in Singapore, emails that required the kind of focus that didn't leave room for thought. Amelia translated when needed, took notes when asked, and tried not to notice how different he looked here. Looser, like he'd unbuttoned something internal. The second day, his phone wouldn't stop ringing. Seoul was losing its mind. The board wanted answers. The PR team wanted statements. Someone named Rachel, the same name from before, called 4 times before Seung Jae finally answered. Amelia was in the kitchen when she heard his voice rise, just slightly. She couldn't make out the words, but the tone was clear. Frustration, exhaustion, something raw underneath. When he emerged 20 minutes later, his expression was carefully blank again. "Everything okay?" Amelia asked. "Fine." He poured himself water, drank it too fast. "Rachel thinks I'm self-sabotaging. She might be right." "Who's Rachel?" "My ex-wife." Amelia's stomach dropped in a way that was absolutely none of her business. "Ah," she said, aiming for neutral and landing somewhere near strangled. Seung Jae caught it. Of course he did. "We divorced 3 years ago," he said, amicably. "She's a lawyer in New York. She thinks I'm making a mistake coming back to Korea." He set down the glass. "She's probably right about that, too." "Do you think you made a mistake?" He looked at her for a long moment. "Ask me in a month." That night, they had dinner on the terrace overlooking the ocean. Just the 2 of them. David and the analysts had gone into town for supplies, and the cook had left soup and banchan and strict instructions in Korean that Amelia translated as, "Eat, or I'll be offended." They ate in comfortable silence for a while, the sound of waves filling the spaces between them. "Can I ask you something?" Seung Jae said eventually. "Of course." "Why translation? You're clearly intelligent enough to do anything. Why choose to speak for other people?" Amelia set down her chopsticks. It was the question she'd been avoiding her whole career. "My parents were diplomats," she said. "Nigerian father, Jamaican mother. I grew up everywhere and nowhere. Every 2 years, new country, new language, new version of myself." She smiled without humor. Translation was the only thing that felt consistent. No matter where I was, I could be the bridge. I didn't have to be anything myself. That sounds lonely. It is. She met his eyes. But it's also safe. Safe from what? From being misunderstood. Seung-jae nodded slowly, like he recognized the feeling. Is that why you left Korea? Amelia asked. Safety? Survival, he corrected. I was 23. My father's scandal had just broken. Everywhere I went, I was either that kid or a potential liability. I couldn't build anything here because no one would let me be anything other than his son. He looked out at the ocean. So I left, built a career where no one knew who my father was, where I was just me. And now you're back. And now I'm back, he echoed, trying to prove I'm more than my last name. Still, you don't have to prove anything, don't I? He turned to her. You saw that board meeting. You heard what they want. They want me to publicly disown him, to say I'm not my father loudly enough that investors feel safe. His voice dropped. But if I do that, I'm still letting him define me, just in the opposite direction. Amelia understood. God, did she understand. My sister used to tell me I was too good at disappearing, she said quietly, that I translated everyone else so well because I didn't want anyone translating me. Was she right? Completely. They sat with that for a moment. What would you say? Seung-jae asked. If someone tried to translate you? Amelia considered. That I'm tired of being the bridge, that sometimes I want to be the destination. The words hung between them, heavier than she'd intended. Seung-jae's eyes were dark and intent. You are, to some people. Am I? Her voice came out softer than planned. Or am I just useful? Amelia, it's fine. She stood quickly, gathering dishes she didn't need to gather. It's late, You're not just useful. He stood too, blocking her path without touching her. You're the first person in months who's looked at me and seen something other than a problem to solve, or an asset to manage. Her heart was doing dangerous things. Seung-jae, I know this is inappropriate. I know you're here professionally. I know... He stopped himself, jaw tight. I know I shouldn't be saying this. Then don't. I can't help it. The confession was so quiet, so raw, that Amelia forgot to breathe. I should go, she whispered. I know. Neither of them moved. The moment stretched, taut as wire, until David's voice called from inside. Seung-jae, Seoul's on the phone again. And the spell broke. Seung-jae stepped back. Professional distance reasserted itself like a wall. I'll take it. In the office, he called back. Then, to Amelia, good night. Good night. She watched him walk away and felt something in her chest crack open despite her best efforts to keep it closed. Later, alone in her room with the ocean crashing below, Amelia opened her laptop and stared at a job alert email. Untranslation position, Geneva. Application deadline, 2 weeks. It was everything she'd worked toward. Prestige, security, the kind of career that would make her parents proud. It was also 8,000 kilometers away from whatever this was becoming. She bookmarked it and went to bed, but she didn't sleep. The third morning in Jeju, Amelia woke to silence. Not peaceful silence. The wrong kind. The kind that meant something had happened. She found David in the kitchen, phone pressed to his ear, expression grim. What's wrong? She asked. He held up a finger, finished his call, then turned to her with the look of someone delivering bad news to a terminal patient. The board vice chair just resigned, publicly, with a statement saying he cannot in good conscience support leadership with questionable integrity. Amelia's stomach dropped. He means Seung-jae. He means Seung-jae. David scrubbed his face. It's all over the news. Stock dropped 6% in an hour. The board's demanding he return to Seoul immediately. There's talk of an emergency vote. A vote on what? David met her eyes. On whether to remove him before he officially starts. Amelia found Seung-jae on the terrace, staring at the ocean like it might have answers. His phone sat beside him, screen dark, intentionally off. "You heard," he said without turning. "I heard." The board chair called, then my lawyer, then Rachel, who was kind enough to say, "I told you so," in 3 different languages. He smiled without humor. "I'm officially a liability." Amelia sat beside him. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know." For the first time since she'd met him, Seung-jae sounded lost. "If I go back now, I look guilty, reactive, like I'm scrambling. But if I stay, I look arrogant, disconnected." He finally looked at her. "There's no right move." "Then make the honest one." "The honest one is to walk away. Let them find someone else. Someone whose father didn't steal from the company I'm trying to lead." "Your father's crimes aren't yours." "Tell that to the board." The bitterness in his voice was new. Amelia hated it. "You came back here for a reason," she said quietly. "What was it? Really?" Seung-jae was quiet for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "Because I was tired of being a ghost. I built this entire career abroad, and it was good, it was successful, but I was always elsewhere. Always the Korean guy in Western boardrooms, always explaining myself. I thought if I came back here, I could just be." He laughed, sharp and hollow. "Turns out I'm still explaining myself, just in Korean now. So stop explaining. It's not that simple." "Yes, it is." Amelia turned to face him fully. "You keep trying to prove you belong, to the board, to the media, to Korea. But you're never going to convince people who've already decided you're guilty. So stop trying." "And do what?" "Just do the work. Let that speak for itself." Seung-jae looked at her like she'd suggested he jump off the terrace. "That's terrifying," he said. "I know. You're asking me to just trust that it'll be enough. I'm asking you to trust yourself." Amelia held his gaze. "You're the most competent person in every room you walk into. You know it. I know it. Even the people trying to tear you down know it. That's why they're scared." Something shifted in his expression. The defeat didn't disappear, but it made room for something else. Determination, maybe, or defiance. "You have a lot of faith in me," he said. "I'm a good judge of character." "Are you?" The question hung between them, loaded with meaning neither of them was ready to unpack. Before Amelia could answer, David appeared in the doorway. "Seung-jae, I hate to interrupt, but the PR team needs a decision. They want to draft a response to the vice chair's resignation. Do we go conciliatory or firm?" Seung-jae stood, and Amelia watched him physically reassemble himself. Shoulders back, expression controlled, the armor clicking into place. "Neither," he said. "We don't respond at all." David's eyes widened. "That's strategic," Seung-jae finished. "His resignation is his problem. I'm not giving it oxygen." He headed inside, then paused. "Schedule. The Seoul meetings for next week. I'll go back when I'm ready. On my terms." After he left, David turned to Amelia with something like awe. "What did you say to him?" "Nothing he didn't already know." That afternoon, while Seung-jae was on calls, Amelia walked the beach alone. The wind was sharp, the sand cold, and her phone buzzed with the UN application reminder. Application closes in 10 days. She should apply. It was the smart move, the safe move. This contract with Seung-jae had 3 weeks left, and then what? She'd go back to London, take other jobs, translate for other people who didn't make her chest feel tight. She opened the application, stared at the blank fields, closed it. Not yet. That evening, Seung-jae found her in the library, surrounded by Korean news articles she was translating for her own understanding. "You don't have to do that," he said. "It's not part of your job." "I know, I'm curious." He sat across from her, loosening his tie. He looked exhausted. "Long day?" Amelia asked. "Long year." He smiled tiredly. "But today was better than yesterday." Progress. Thanks to you. Amelia shook her head. I just said what needed saying. That's what I pay you for. Is that all? The words slipped out before she could stop them. Seung-jae went very still. What do you mean? Amelia should have deflected, should have laughed it off. Instead, she said, I don't know anymore. What I'm doing here, what this is. This is a professional contract. I know. You're my translator. I know that too. So why does it feel like more? His voice was rough. Amelia's heart was pounding. I don't know. They stared at each other across the table, and the air between them felt charged with everything they weren't saying. I should go, Amelia whispered. You keep saying that. Because I mean it. Do you? She stood. So did he. Seung-jae, this can't. I know. I work for you. I know. This is complicated. I know. He stepped closer. I know all of that, Amelia. And I'm still. He stopped himself, jaw clenched. I'm still thinking about you when I shouldn't be. Her breath caught. You shouldn't say that. I know, but I can't stop. He was close enough now that she could see the exhaustion in his eyes, the vulnerability he usually hid so well. Tell me to stop. Tell me this is just professional and I'll believe you. She should. She absolutely should. I can't, she whispered. The confession broke something open between them. Seung-jae's hand came up slowly, carefully, giving her every chance to step away. His fingers brushed her cheek, and Amelia's eyes closed at the contact. What are we doing? She breathed. I don't know. This is a terrible idea. I know. I'm leaving in 3 weeks. I know. She opened her eyes and found him watching her with an intensity that made her forget every rational thought she'd ever had. Seung-jae. He kissed her. Soft, hesitant, asking permission with every second. Amelia's hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer, answering the question. The kiss deepened for a heartbeat, 2, before they both pulled back, breathing hard, foreheads touching. We can't, Amelia said, even as her hands stayed on his chest. I know. This doesn't change anything. I know. I'm still leaving. I know. His thumb traced her jaw. But you're still here now. And God help her, she was. They stood there, holding on to each other like drowning people until Amelia finally found the strength to step back. I need to think, she said. Okay. This is complicated. I know. Stop saying that. He smiled, sad and small. Okay. Amelia left before she could change her mind, before she could kiss him again and forget all the reasons this was impossible. In her room, she sat on the bed and touched her lips, still feeling the pressure of his. Then she opened her laptop and stared at the UN application. Her phone buzzed, a text from Seung-jae. I'm sorry if I crossed a line, but I'm not sorry I did it. Amelia closed her eyes. She wasn't sorry either, and that was the problem. They didn't talk about the kiss. For 2 days, they moved around each other with careful professionalism. Amelia translated. Seung-jae worked. They were polite, distant, and absolutely fooling no one. David watched them like he was witnessing a slow-motion car crash and couldn't decide whether to intervene or sell tickets. On the 4th day in Jeju, Seung-jae announced they were returning to Seoul. The board meeting is in 3 days, he said over breakfast, not quite meeting Amelia's eyes. I need to be there. Are you ready? She asked. No, but I'm going anyway. Seoul welcomed them back with rain and hostility. The media had camped outside the corporate building. The board was fractured. Half wanted Seung-jae gone, half were waiting to see if he'd implode on his own. The shareholders were nervous. The stock was still down. It was a disaster, and Seung-jae walked into it with his head up. The night before the board meeting, Amelia found him in his office at midnight, surrounded by papers and cold coffee. You should sleep, she said. I will. Soon. Seung-jae. I'm fine, Amelia. He wasn't. She could see it in the tension of his shoulders, the tight set of his jaw. He was terrified and trying so hard not to show it. She sat down across from him. What's the worst that can happen tomorrow? They vote me out. I lose everything I came back for. I prove my father's legacy is inescapable, and everyone who said I was a mistake was right. He looked up at her. That's the worst. And the best? They give me a chance. I do the work. I prove them wrong. He paused. And maybe I get to stop apologizing for existing. You're going to be brilliant tomorrow, Amelia said quietly. You know that, right? I don't feel brilliant. I feel like an imposter. Good. That means you care. She leaned forward. The people who are certain they belong are usually the ones who shouldn't be there. You doubt yourself because you have standards. That's not weakness. That's integrity. Seung-jae stared at her for a long moment, then quietly, I don't know what I'd do without you. You'd be fine. I wouldn't. The weight of that statement settled between them. I got the UN offer, Amelia said. She didn't know why she said it. Maybe because secrets were becoming too heavy to carry. They want an answer by Friday. Something flickered across Seung-jae's face. That's incredible. Congratulations. Thank you. Are you going to take it? I don't know. Why not? It's everything you've worked for. I know. So what's stopping you? You, she thought. This, whatever we're pretending, isn't happening. But she said, I'm not sure I want to be a translator anymore. Seung-jae looked genuinely surprised. What do you want to be? I don't know. That's the problem. She laughed without humor. I've spent my whole life speaking for other people. I'm not sure I know how to speak for myself. Then maybe it's time to learn. Is that what you're doing tomorrow? Learning to speak for yourself. I'm trying. He stood, walked to the window. I spent 8 years being the person other people needed me to be. Competent, controlled, uncomplicated, and it worked. I was successful. But I was also... He trailed off. Lonely, Amelia offered quietly. Yeah. He turned to face her. And then I met you, and suddenly I couldn't remember why I'd worked so hard to keep everyone at a distance. Amelia's throat tightened. Seung-jae. I know this is impossible. I know you're leaving. I know I have no right to ask you to stay. He crossed the room, stopping just in front of her. But I'm going to anyway. Stay. Take a different job. Give us a chance to be something real. Her heart was breaking and soaring at the same time. You're asking me to give up everything I've worked for. I'm asking you to choose what you want, not what's safe, not what makes sense, what you actually want. And if I don't know, then I'll wait while you figure it out. Amelia stood, and they were too close again, the air between them electric. I can't think when you're this close, she whispered. Good. Stop thinking. That's terrible advice. I know. And then she was kissing him, and he was kissing her back, and this time there was no hesitation. Just certainty. Just choice. His hands were in her hair. Hers were gripping his shoulders. The kiss was deeper this time. More desperate, like they were trying to say everything words couldn't hold. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Seung-jae pressed his forehead to hers. Stay, he whispered. I have to finish the contract first. And then, we'll see. It wasn't a promise, but it wasn't a no. The board meeting was at 9 a.m. Amelia sat in the back of the room, officially there to translate for international stakeholders, unofficially there because Seung-jae had asked her to be. He presented for 40 minutes. Financials, strategy, vision. He spoke in Korean, clear and confident, without a single unnecessary apology. When he finished, the room was silent. Then Kwon Mireille, the board chair, spoke. You've made your case, Mr. Beck. Now let's vote. Amelia's hands clenched in her lap. The vote was 11-4 in Sung-jae's favor. He was in. After the meeting, Sung-jae found Amelia in the hallway. His expression was carefully controlled, but she could see the relief in his eyes. Congratulations, she said. Thank you. You were perfect in there. I had good coaching. He glanced around. They were alone. Amelia, about what I said last night. I'm taking the job, she said quickly. His face fell. Oh, in Geneva for 2 years. She stepped closer. It's a fixed-term contract, 2 years, and then I'm free to go anywhere. Understanding dawned slowly. Anywhere. Anywhere, she smiled. Even back here, if there's a reason to. There will be. He said it with absolute certainty. I'll make sure of it. That's a big promise. I know, but I mean it. He reached for her hand, laced their fingers together. 2 years. 2 years. I can work with that. 3 months later. Amelia stood in her Geneva apartment, video call open on her laptop. Sung-jae's face filled the screen, slightly pixelated but smiling. How's the UN treating you? He asked in Korean. Like I'm competent and disposable, she replied in French, grinning. So pretty standard. I'm learning French, by the way. I noticed. You just said good morning instead of goodbye. I'm a work in progress. Aren't we all? They talked for an hour about his work, her work, the weather, nothing important, and everything that mattered. I'm coming to visit next month, Sung-jae said as they were saying goodbye. You came last month. I know. I'm coming again. The flights are expensive. I don't care. Amelia laughed, warm and genuine. Okay, come visit. I will. He paused. I miss you. I miss you too. 21 months left. Who's counting? Me, every day. After they hung up, Amelia sat by her window and looked out at the Geneva skyline. She thought about bridges and destinations, about speaking and being heard, about safety and choice. For the first time in her life, she wasn't translating anyone. She was just herself. And somehow, that was enough. 1 year later. Sung-jae stood in the arrivals terminal at Geneva Airport holding terrible coffee and fighting the urge to check his phone again. Then he saw her, Amelia, walking toward him with a suitcase and a smile that made his chest hurt in the best way. You're early, she said. I was motivated. He pulled her close, breathed her in. How was the flight? Long, but worth it. You're really done? Contract finished? Contract finished. She pulled back to look at him. I'm officially unemployed and directionless. Perfect. I have a job offer for you. She raised an eyebrow. Oh? Communications director, Seoul, starts whenever you want. That sounds suspiciously like nepotism. It is absolutely nepotism. Do you want it? Amelia pretended to consider. What's the pay? Competitive. Benefits? Excellent. And the boss? Difficult, demanding, emotionally constipated. He smiled. But he's trying to be better. Sounds terrible. It really is. I'll take it. Sung-jae kissed her right there in the airport, and for once, neither of them was translating anything. They were just understood. Thanks for watching this story of translation, trust, and taking chances. If you loved Amelia and Sung-jae's journey, hit that like button and subscribe for more romance stories that respect your intelligence. Drop a comment. Would you take a leap of faith for love or play it safe? I read every single one. And if this story spoke to you, share it with someone who needs a reminder that sometimes the scariest choice is the right one. See you in the next story.